All right, so we're evaluating responses, we're tracking the risk, and we're analyzing new risk. All right, so don't overthink this process. I mean, this is the idea that I'm gonna stick with the same example I've been using with you all. Is we're building condos off the coast of Florida. All right, hurricane comes, and let's say we put sandbags out. Okay, so hurricane comes and it pounds on our building for 3 or 4 days, and the hurricane goes. All right, a couple days later, we come out to assess the damage, and we notice, oh, some of our sandbags broke. Now we have sand in the drain. So risk, flooding from a hurricane, risk response, put sandbags out, right? And then as we track that risk and we analyze its effectiveness, okay, response effective in keeping water out. However, oh, what just happened there? Response effective in keeping water out. However, the risk response, spin-off risk, secondary risk, we now have water and we now have sand in our drain and we got to pump it out. All right, so we're looking at the risk effectiveness, all right, of our strategies and our implemented, all of our activities and what that does. Okay, so let's take the plan, the documents, the register, and the report. And lessons learned, okay, don't use maybe cloth burlap sacks for your sandbags. Use maybe a 20 milliliter plastic bag, I don't know. All right, then we'll analyze this data, we'll audit the results, and then the output, generic. Data in, information out. We also got to take the work performance report of the project though. We got to analyze that as well. So we take data in the report. In the output, we get work performance information about the effectiveness of the risk management activities. Okay, we're going to use a new vendor then. So in this case, we'll analyze it and we'll say it was effective to keep the water out to use the sandbags. However, we're going to go with another vendor where the performance of those sandbags will be better. So that's what we're looking at. We're looking for corrective or preventative actions. Right, that's where the change request comes in, and then we may update our approach. Effective and ineffective risk mitigation methods. All right. So this information is fed back, right? The information becomes an input to monitor and control, which then gives us a work performance report as the output. All right, so inputs here, the key inputs we take are the risk register and the risk report. The risk register, let me ask you all this. There's the risk register and the risk report. Which one is going to have the risk responses?
The planned risk responses or the actual risk responses?
Both.
I think the register.
Good. Good. Now, the risk report is just going to say the response was effective or it wasn't effective and we ended up using this much money and next time we'll make a change, right? Remember, the report's like sort of the summary, but the registers are all the detailed information. This is exactly what we're going to do. This is what we did. Here's the effectiveness, right? The project plans, work performance data, work performance reports, we take all that into account. And then we look at technical performance analysis. And that's just the idea of, did these burlap sacks keep the water out? Did they hold up? Right? Did they rip earlier than they weren't supposed to, right? Did the material deteriorate and sand started getting out? And then we'll also look at reserve analysis. We looked at that with quality. And we're going to look at it here now. There's the amount of money left, more, the amount of risk that we have, more than the amount of money that we have to deal with it. And then there's a risk burn down chart. We see this in the Agile field. Right? We can create a chart that shows at any given moment, this is how much risk exposure we have, and it should be going down. And then we can chart actual risk against expected risk. So we can also audit. We can determine if risk management processes are followed and they're effective. Right? We have risk owners who are responsible for implementing risk responses if that risk event takes place. And then we can go and audit and make sure that those risk responses were put in place. Okay. Those are the tools and the techniques. I want to mention a couple other things before we get to this case study. All right, in your slides, when we were at plan risk responses, and we came up with avoid, transfer, mitigate. Remember ATM for threats, see the money, share, enhance, exploit for opportunities. We can escalate both positive and negative risk. We can accept both positive and negative risk. If we actively accept, we put money aside, contingency reserves. If we passively accept, we just, put it on the watch list. Okay. I didn't mention this last time, so I'm going to mention it now. So you're going to have to write this down here or maybe flip back to that section. Okay. There's something called the contingent response strategies, right? So in the contingent response strategies, there is let's see where I have some white space, I can write it down. I'll use a little bit here. We have something called a fallback plan. Right? And then there's the contingency plan. Oh my, why can I do it? Funky Y, it looks like an X. Contingency plan. Okay. 2 plans, fallback, contingency. Okay. When we avoid a threat, we have to change course. Remember, in order to avoid a threat, you got to do something different. So if I'm in my garden and I'm walking towards the back of the garden, all of a sudden I see a beehive. I need to, in order to avoid the threat, I need to change direction. I'm walking here, I see the bees. Oh, I'm walking there. I'm avoiding it, right? If I want to transfer that, okay, then I'm going to get some insurance policy. Aflac, all right, if I get, stung by a bee and I'm allergic right now. If I want to mitigate the threat, then I'll put on a bee suit. Minimize the impact, all right? So for the fallback plan says this, so here's the difference. Before the risk event happens, I can avoid, transfer, or mitigate the threat, okay? If I wait for the risk event to happen and then I take action, I'm either using a fallback or a contingency plan. So a fallback plan says that I'm changing course. A contingency plan says that I'm staying the course. So a fallback plan is, so if I remember last time I used the wedding example because it's going to a wedding. And I talked about the wedding and it's raining. It's been raining here in California. It's storming right now. So I was talking about raining and I said, okay, it's going to rain on this wedding. So you can avoid the threat by changing the date or the course or the location, right? So a fallback plan is like this. We're the PMs and we look up in the Saturday morning, we're like, it's going to rain. Our clients are going to have a wedding this Saturday night. Let's just go inside and have an indoor wedding. Okay, that's avoiding the threat. But the fallback plan says this, okay, it's going to rain. Let's hire a crew and let's have them, or let's do this. Let's reserve both the clubhouse and the greens, and then we'll set up for an outdoor wedding. And we'll hire extra hands. And if it rains, then we'll take everything and we'll go inside and have an indoor wedding. That's the fallback plan. We are changing course. We're doing something different. We're no longer sticking to the original plan. Okay. But I can put a tent up, and we talked about that. We can walk outside and say, you know what? I think it's going to rain today. Let's just put up a huge tent and let's just have the wedding. If I put up the tent before rain comes, I'm mitigating. I'm taking some action or activity to minimize the probability and or impact, okay? In this case, I can't minimize the probability of rain. I can minimize the impact, okay? However, if I say, okay, you know what? I'm going to pay the company, I'm going to pay the guys that, that put the tent up a couple $100, tell them to keep the vents in the van, come dressed up real nice. You can, join the wedding, but if it rains, haul ass to your van and go pop that tent up, all right? That's a contingency plan. I'm waiting for the risk event to happen, and then I'm going to implement a risk response. All right, so fallback plan, risk response says that I must change course. Contingency plan, I'm staying the course, but now I'm going to take some action to minimize the impact. Follow me so far? Okay, so again, walking in my garden, I see bees this way, I walk that way. I'm avoiding the threat, all right? But fallback plan says, you know what? bees aren't harmful to humans. They're not aggressive. I'm just going to walk through this patch of bees, and if I get stung, then I'm going to run. Right? That'd be my fallback plan. Or I'm gonna put a bee suit on. I'm mitigating. Or you know what? I'm gonna walk through, and I think the bees are fine. But if I get stung a couple times, then I'm gonna go back and put the bee suit on, and then I'll come back and finish the job. That's the contingency plan, right? Right. So the risk event must happen in order for you to use a contingent response plan. And if I change course, fallback plan. If I stay course, contingency plan. Okay. Got two more for you. After we implement a risk response, we are going to get a spin-off risk. All right. So there's going to be something called residual risk. There's a little bit of risk that remains. And there's going to be what's the other one? Residual risk and the pop-up. What is the term for the pop-up risk? The PMI term. Goodness. I'm gonna need to go get the pin box real quick. Residual risk and a spin-off risk. Change the name for version 6. So I want to make sure I give you the correct name. So just 1 second. Indulge me for a quick second. Here goes mitigate, analysis, decision making. Where's our contingent response? Okay, it might be in another one. I will find it and get back to you. But I'm going to call it a spin-off risk for now. And let me describe the two. And then I'll come back and make sure I give you the official term for this one. Oh, secondary risk. Thank you. It came to my mind. Secondary risk. We have residual risk and then secondary risk. Okay. So residual risk, a little bit of risk remains after you implement the response. Secondary risk, a new risk pops up as a result of implementing the risk response. Okay. So we have a wedding, threat of rain. We decided we're going to implement a response. We're going to mitigate the risk and we're going to put a tent up. So we put the tent up. Okay. But because rain doesn't fall, directly 90 degrees, it comes at an angle. The people who are sitting at the perimeter of the tent, maybe their socks and their shoes get a little wet. Okay. Residual risk, a little bit of risk that remains. We put the tent up, but a little bit of the people on the perimeter are still getting wet. That's residual risk. Okay. Secondary risk. We implemented a risk response, put up a tent. Can you guys see a new risk that comes from putting a tent up? Can you think of one?
Your tent blows away.
Yeah, tent could blow away. Tent could fall over and injure someone. Maybe we're at the green and it could cause a huge divot in the golf course. Now they want to charge something, but that's the idea. Every time, it's kind of like I was talking to somebody about cars the other day, right? So you're in a car, you're about to get into an accident, you step on the brakes, right? All right. So mitigation, your car's anti-lock brake system kicks in, right? Okay. So that right, and then boom, maybe airbags deploy. Okay. All right. Residual risk, right? Maybe as the impact comes and the seatbelt catches you, all right. Maybe you still got bruised or something, right? A little bit of risk remained after that airbag deployed. And then secondary risk, some people get burned from the explosion that the airbag causes, right? So risk response, deploy airbag to keep your face from going. Secondary risk, you get burned from the airbag. Residual risk, you get a little bit of bruising from the seatbelt. Right, so that's the idea of residual and secondary risk.